Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Trump puts tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, spurring a trade war, maybe. Most of the world knows by now that Trump followed through on his promise to force Canada and Mexico to get tough on border security, cut the flow of deadly fentanyl, or face 25% tariffs starting this week. Not much happened until the midnight deadline was reached, and then the dominoes fell. Mexico came first and was given a 30-day extension for the tariffs. Part of the deal was their promise to put 10,000 troops on the border with the U.S. to cut illegal immigration and stop the flow of deadly drugs. Later in the day, Canada, which had already announced retaliatory tariffs, decided to fold and put troops on the border. I note that Canada in particular needs U.S. trade a lot more than the U.S. needs them. They were also given 30 days to work out the details. Then there is China. I note that given the huge amount of variety of goods coming in from China, the likelihood that the tariffs on China will not increase the cost of goods here is zero. Especially hard hit would be Walmart and perhaps Amazon. But it remains to be seen how this will progress. However, Xi is still foolishly trying to prove he's a bigger force than Trump. I predict he loses this showdown, especially because China under Xi is failing financially. The momentum and energy is definitely on Trump's side right now. For my own family, I'd rather pay more for some goods than support a government run by a James Bond type villain who wants to rule the world. I note that the Chinese goods in question tend to be low-cost goods in many cases. In turn, China has slapped a tariff on coal and natural gas from the U.S. This clearly will hurt the sinking Chinese economy. Tied to this, our new Secretary of State, one of my favorites, Marco Rubio, has been making progress and was just announced that Panama has rolled over and will reduce the influence of the Red Chinese in the operation of the Panama Canal. This is a major breakthrough. Parallel to that, Venezuela agrees to accept illegals from the U.S. As we reported last week, Colombia rolled over in less than a day. In a bit of a surprise, Venezuela has now agreed to accept its criminals picked up here in the U.S. I'm wondering what else is brewing here with Venezuela. It may be that the country has sunk low enough that it knows it has to enact reforms and line up with the U.S. for a better future. Speaking of packing up illegals, Trump recently announced something that I've been advocating for a while. The U.S. base on the island of Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, is also known as Gitmo, will have its detention facility dramatically expanded to accommodate illegals that cannot be shipped to their home countries or simply to house them for serious crimes. This might be a bit late, however, as the normal ICE detention facilities just ran out of beds. Bad news there. Several thousand illegals who should be out of the country already will now be set free with ankle monitors. Given the many reports recently of criminals cutting off their ankle monitors and committing more crimes, this does not make me feel safe. Trump proposes that USA take over Gaza. I didn't make that up, folks. My regular audience members know that while I consider Trump a dramatically better choice than anyone put forward by the whack Dems, I do have my concerns. Trump had his first international leader visit, and in this case, it was Netanyahu from Israel. I'm a strong supporter of Israel, so that is a positive. But then Trump came out with this proposal for the U.S. to take over Gaza and take advantage of its beautiful beachfront access to create a totally new operation. As an incentive, he emphasized the removal of unexploded bombs and the reality that the Gazan developments are totally destroyed anyway. I also agree that the world cannot let terrorists backed by Iran to continue to be in control of this narrow strip of land. Hamas has not been exterminated. I again call for their total extermination, just like cockroaches. So what's the downside? After our international failures in Vietnam, Iraq, and more recently Afghanistan, why would we want to have any better luck or likely to have any better luck creating a modern non-Hamas operation in this strip of land? Further, I believe that Israel, not the USA, is in charge of this area, if anybody really is. On a related track, in 2018, I released my first book, Decline of America, 100 Years of Leadership Failures. I wrote it for two reasons. One, America's slide into a huge government bureaucracy and our massive government debt. Well, both the bureaucracy and the debt have continued to balloon out of control. Diving into Gaza sounds like another American money pit. I doubt taxpayers that supported Trump are up for that. How about we support Israel along with the other civilized nations and let them run the show? So far, they have pounded the daylights out of the bad guys. Let them finish the job with our munitions and other support. The dirty dozen. Here are some wasteful federal grants. A bunch of whack Dems have gone to the media to complain about Trump's attack on USAID. These are the same clowns who authorized the horrible waste of money that we're seeing. Remember that America is paying almost $1 trillion a year on the federal debt. Maybe these other countries should start sending aid to us. As discussion of wasteful projects hits the news, a recent news report tipped me to an article in the Federalist by M.D. Kittle, where he highlights his picks for wasting our tax dollars. Time does not permit the full details of the list, but how about some examples? The article starts with a numbing statistic. The Government Accountability Office says taxpayers lost more than $100 billion in improper payments, $50.3 billion in Medicaid payments, and $55.1 billion in Medicare in 2023 alone. The payment errors represented 43% of the total of $240 billion in improper payments reported throughout all federal agencies. All told, federal taxpayers were on the hook for $2.7 trillion in payment errors between 2003 and 2023, according to the Government Accountability Office. Think about if we didn't have wasted that money, that our federal debt would be much lower. So what are we paying for? How about some of the examples? The State Department, $100,000 for a fun run for Palestinian girls. National Science Foundation, 2-year grant of $1.5 million at Florida State University to fund, I quote, Black feminist epistemologies building a sisterhood in computing. National Science Foundation, $119,520 for a conference titled Reimagining Biology Education Through Social Justice, featuring a talk on gender-inclusive adaptations to biology teaching. Imagine that. I thought in biology they taught us there were 2 genders. Department of Agriculture, $717,000 to Ohio State University. Money's being used to solve cultural resistance in the USA and Europe that impedes the acceptance of insect proteins as food sources. Folks, how many of us want to eat bugs? Another National Science Foundation, $399,930, let's call it $400,000, to Montana State University. This is a DEI project funded through September 2027 and supposed to honor indigenous knowledge by, quote, infusing native ways of knowing into engineering education, but without engaging in the misappropriation of indigenous knowledge. What about misappropriation of taxpayer dollars, folks? Institute of Museum and Library Science, $352,799 to the University of Wisconsin system to investigate play-based programs and spaces at museums and to develop a diversity audit tool for practitioners to examine their play programs and spaces for DEI and other considerations. Come on, folks. National Science Foundation again, $634,856, also to the University of Wisconsin, urgent yet underexplored dimensions of equity-minded pedagogical change work in higher education. Folks, I have a PhD in higher education. I don't know what that stands for. Department of Health and Human Services, $792,443 to the University of Texas, Austin, studying the concept that people are normally heterosexual. Yep, didn't make that up, folks. National Science Foundation, $445,600 to Ohio State University for girls doing rock climbing. Yep. Department of Health and Human Services, $600,000 to my alma mater, the University of Virginia. Study structural ableism and basically the dominance of normal people who are heterosexual. Gosh, do you think we could just read a 50-year-old biology textbook and figure that out? National Science Foundation, we'll wrap up here. More than $112,000 of Rutgers University to develop, I quote, theory around processes of social control, state practices, human agency about the deportation of immigrants with criminal records. Hey, folks, they're called illegals, and we shouldn't have let them in the first place. I don't need to study that. How about some quick hits? Such a breath of fresh air. I caught a quick press conference with articulate, straight-talking Caroline Leavitt, the new White House spokesperson. This is the best person I've seen in this slot in a long time. Our new U.S. Attorney General may be Trump's best pick yet. Another brilliant, articulate, and attractive woman with a list of accomplishments under her belt already. Note that all GOP senators voted for her. However, the only non-GOP vote was from a Pennsylvania senator, the infamous Fetterman. My observation is that we are to bring the country together. Why more Dems did not do the right thing and vote for this outstanding female candidate? What would it have hurt them to cross the aisle just a little bit? Come on, folks. To date, all of Trump's nominations have been approved. The three toughest ones are right ahead: Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and Kash Patel. Let's see how it goes, folks. Predictions by the pundits is that all three will be approved. I've got whiplash on this one. The U.S. Postal Service stopped accepting packages from China and Hong Kong, and then a day later said, yeah, we're going to put them back on the list without considering the economic implications. And the deal is that as part of the new tariffs on Chinese imports, Trump eliminated an exemption for small packages. This was known as the de minimis rule. The rule waives import duties for small packages valued at less than $800 shipped into the U.S. According to a helpful Newsmax article, the original idea was intended to exempt personal gifts and other items that Americans sent home from trips abroad. The problem is that it turned into a mess since it allowed foreign businesses to sell billions of dollars of small items in the U.S. without paying any duties. Our friends at CBP, Customs and Border Protection, are supposed to be keeping track of all of those parcels. According to the Newsmax article, the CBP reported over 1.36 billion de minimis packages for fiscal year 2024. In comparison, this is roughly a 10 times increase over 2015. This is a tough job to track all those packages, and some type of automated system will need to be used. And again, I do want us to start assessing those duties that come in for commercial purposes. It's only fair, folks. And again, Part of the reason for tariffs is to protect U.S. producers. The booty is thousands of small parcels like DVDs, toys, and video games come in from sources around the world. Those are commercial sources, folks, and they should be paying duties. Samir, as you know, this is part of our series of interviews for Saving America, and this establishes that the world is full of interesting people, and we welcome you here for your first appearance on Saving America. He is the CEO of Blue Ocean Global Technology and co-founder of Girl Power Talk. He is a CFA chart holder, a CFP professional, and a chartered alternative investment analyst. Samir leads client engagements focused on digital transformation, risk management, and technology development. He is a subject matter expert witness in economic damages, intellectual property, and internet defamation cases. He authors CLE programs with the Philadelphia Bar Association. Samir is a frequent speaker at private industry and public sector conferences, including engagements with the Federal Home Loan Bank, Global Digital Marketing Summit, IBM, New York State Bar Association, U.S. Defense Leadership Forum, and the U.S. State Department's Foreign Service Institute. He serves on the board of directors of Future Business Leaders of America and Girl Power USA. He is a member of a number of professional associations. I met Samir recently at the annual meeting of the Academy of Legal Studies and Business, where we are both members. He is a graduate of Georgetown University and has held leadership roles at Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and Scotiabank. He is also a CFA Institute 2022 Inspirational Leader Award recipient. Now, we had to edit down this list of his accomplishments or we would not have time for the interviews.
I hope I can live up to I didn't know if you were talking about me, but it's one of those things where I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to share perspective here. David, one of the things that I really value, Dr. Schein, is cultivating relationships with people. And that's why I joined the Academy of Legal Studies and Business and how we became friends. And I think our commitment to education and empowering people to make the most informed decisions is definitively mutual, which is how we ended up here today. Not after, just meeting in DC, but also the memorable lunch we had at one of your favorite French restaurants in Houston going back a few weeks ago.
And so, as you know, we asked 3 questions, and you and I talked briefly before we began recording today that our target is to inspire people to check into you and to say, hey, this is a pretty cool guy. Let's see what he's doing, and to pursue more, not to tell the entire story, or that would take 2 weeks. And we don't have that much bandwidth.
I would say that, we'll try to remember that Abraham Lincoln aphorism of better to be thought a fool than to speak up and remove all doubt. So hopefully it's a memorable 15 minutes.
But our first question is, many people hear the acronym CFA, but what does that mean and why is that significant?
CFA is Chartered Financial Analyst. The Financial Times called it the gold standard in finance. And it's a designation that's earned from taking 3 examinations that cover a wide discipline within economics, accounting, finance, alternative investments. And I think there's roughly around 250,000 or so CFA charter holders in the world. I've been incredibly blessed to not just be a CFA charter holder for the last 12 or 13 years, but to have roles at CFA Institute in a volunteer and also a consulting capacity. I've spoken at probably 50 plus CFA member societies. There's about 180 throughout the world. I've delivered programs. I've hosted their talk show. I author regularly for CFA Institute on a range of subjects that, of course, are of mutual interest. And I've also had the pleasure of there's 3 levels of the CFA exam. The last level is level 3, and I've been a CFA exams grader I was a senior grader for about, I think, 10 years up until COVID, and then they moved it online. And people would say, wow, Samir, you must really be a closet nerd to be a grader of exams. And I said, well, that's definitely true. But actually grading the exams, David, was one of the best kept secrets at CFA Institute, because prior to COVID, they would fly in anywhere from 600 to 900 CFA charter holders from all over the world. And we would spend a week or 2 weeks together. And not only was that such an eclectic collection of beautiful, intelligent, and oftentimes I would say benevolent and altruistic people who wanted to give back to the profession, but they also did really fun things like rent out James Monroe's house for parties and get-togethers. And so that was a very special time in my life to be able to go down there and give back to the Institute. I think anytime you have designations and credentials and you being, so accomplished and, not just being, a lawyer, but also a practitioner in-house with large organizations, as well as an academic and somebody that is, driving the next generation of leaders in business and law. Anytime you have any designations, they're signals. So CFA is a really strong signal to the marketplace, to those that know about it, that this person has a stamp of understanding in valuation, in corporate finance, in accounting, in economics, and of course, in ethics. And many CFA charter holders, the vast majority of them, go into and have senior roles in portfolio management, business management, venture capital, private equity, real estate. And so it's certainly not just been an awesome designation that people comment on, and those who know about it say, wow, Samir, I had no idea you were a charter holder, and I saw that. But most importantly, like anything, it's about what you put in. And so I've put a piece of my heart, soul, and mind into the CFA community, and I've received, a big multiple of that back to me in relationships, opportunities, and just authentic collaboration.
Very, very impressive. Our second question is, how did you happen to start Blue Ocean Global Technology, and what type of services does that company provide?
Yeah, so, the joys of entrepreneurship, I always say I'm the chief dishwasher and last one to get paid, first one to fix all the problems. But entrepreneurship is many ways like jumping in the Pacific Ocean, trying to swim across. And I founded a wealth management company, registered investment advisor, and I didn't want to be held back by technology resources. So I did a global search looking for people of character, and I interviewed 100, 150 small businesses in digital marketing, in technology development, looking for some that I could hire for myself to launch our company, as well as for clients and friends. And I came across a couple really good ones, and I formed partnerships with them. I became a client, I referred clients, and I said, wait a minute, I've spent a year and a half, much of that time in the emerging markets, finding some really good partners. I should probably share those resources. And that is the impetus for how Blue Ocean Global Technology was created. And over the last 12 or so years, we've evolved. Of course, we specialize, David, in building, monitoring, repairing digital reputation. So how do you take the trust, goodwill, relationship capital you have offline for your business, yourself, and how do you represent that with authenticity on the internet? So when somebody is referred to Samir and they go and Google him and they read about him and they say, wow, this is somebody I really connect with. And so online reputation management, custom technology development is a core focus. Additionally, we've evolved where a law firm, Nixon Peabody, said to us about 8 years ago, they said, Samir, you've done really good work for our firm. We'd like you to be an expert witness in one of our cases. I'm like, what's an expert witness and why would I want to do that? And so since then, we've built a niche practice within Blue Ocean Global Technology where we are hired to address and quantify damages on court cases related to business disputes, of course, economic damages, disgorgement, intellectual property, copyright, trademark, social media, internet defamation, digital marketing, source code. So there's a wide range because you can say that we have expertise in different areas. So we're called in by some of the largest law firms in the world, including, some in the top 5, of course, by size and revenue, but many boutiques. And we're called in to craft expert reports, to provide litigation consulting services and advise attorneys on how they should proceed. And many times, as they say in my NDAs, to basically do their work and then be able to take on more cases. And that's been a product of the way that we've provided value. And so I think that's not only been a really important source of growth for us, but it's been an opportunity to learn. And just about every expert witness client that we take on, either the client or the law firm or both, ends up working with us in several capacities. And more recently, David, we have moved into federal contracting. We're approved on the SAM platform. We're working on joining the GSA schedule. Blue Ocean Global Technology recently became an 8A certified business, minority-owned business. And so we're working in the federal contracting space as well.
Sounds like a lot of fun. And as you know, I'm parallel to you, an expert witness. My area, of course, is employment law and sometimes academically related things like business ethics and things like that. So I find it an interesting, and I do find it expands your horizons a little bit. And it's an interesting area, but it's so fascinating because there's so many pieces that you have under Blue Ocean Global Technology. But I want to switch gears for our third question. As co-founder of Girl Power Talk, would you please share with the audience what that organization does? And since you were a co-founder, tell us how you came to start it. And as you and I know separately, I'm a huge proponent of equal opportunities for women across the world. And, I'm proud to have women in my life at many different levels who I want to make sure that they have as much opportunity as men do.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Girl Power Talk was born out of trends that exist in history, in society, in America, globally. One of them being, for the most of our history, look at all the progress we've made in science, innovation, math, technology, and women have been relegated to the sidelines for a big part of it. And imagine if that wasn't the case. Think about how much farther we may be. So Girl Power Talk recognizes the extraordinary potential of women in business. And so Girl Power Talk was born out of that trend. There's also a huge supply-demand imbalance of qualified opportunities for young women, exacerbated in the emerging markets. Africa's 54 countries having 750 million or so people under the age of 28. India having 500 million people under the age of 26, half of them, of course, being women. And so how can we find brilliant young people? And the world has changed so much because of the internet and technology. You look at a young woman in Kampala, Uganda, in Karachi, Pakistan, in Mumbai, India, or in Chandigarh, India, where our offices are, or in Jakarta, Indonesia. And today, she, watches Game of Thrones, knows about Breaking Bad, understands and pays attention to the U.S. political race, and she can actually connect with and relate to perhaps executives and founders and colleagues in the United States in a way that no one ever could have imagined 30 years ago. And so if you take those concepts and you say, imagine a fictional book, Dr. Schein, where young people are happy and there's intellectual freedom and they're learning, growing, and creating together. And there's a conscious bias towards women. Now imagine making it real. And in many ways, like the Peter Drucker aphorism, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Girl Power Talk was born to reverse engineer a company culture that is innovative, similar to perfection. We strive for it, knowing we can never achieve it. We believe in creating a utopia, knowing we never will, but we'll get closer than anyone else if we believe and we have a healthy balance. And then I also think young people, particularly younger generations, generally speaking, of course, to older generations, they really care about driving social impact and doing good. And many times we reach this why in the road. I got to choose to have a career focused on money, or I'm going to go work for a nonprofit. And we don't believe they should be mutually exclusive. And so Girl Power Talk team members work with our foundation, Girl Power USA, a 501c3 based in the United States. We're building a brand and a culture. It's the absolute best place for young people, especially young women, to learn, grow, and develop. And Girl Power Talk team members across departments, be it our growing legal team led by our Chief Legal Officer, Ashna Dougal, be it in finance, be it in marketing, be it in technology, be it in public relations and content writing. they're provided opportunities to work on real projects with clients direct, or as we started in doing some of the delivery for Blue Ocean Global Technology projects. So the two companies work hand in hand, and you create something called Girl Power Talk. And I never thought that I'd have, I'm just thinking back to a conversation where there was a lead partner in Manhattan at a law firm, and she went to Yale Law School, and she said, Samir, our assignment was to find the best expert with the most case history experience. And you've got a page, which is pretty good, better than most. And I found two other people, one had 2 pages, one had a page and a half. And so technically I'm supposed to go with them. But before we start this interview, I want to say that we're going to hire you. I read a lot about you, and I'm someone who always said I'd give back to women. And I don't think I do enough in terms of impact and projects. And then I'm successful now. I'm leading this law firm, and I look at you, and you're a man that is spending a considerable amount of time in his life to provide opportunities and do the things that I always said I want to do, should be doing, I'm not. And so at the very least, I think in becoming friends with you, maybe we can work on some of those things together. And I also watched some of your keynotes, and I think you'd probably be better on the stand than these other experts. So that's my disconnect. But I never thought that creating something like that could be an asset in connecting with people, because it's so easy when it's real, and so that's a little bit about Girl Power Talk. And I know I've masterfully used my ears and mouth disproportionately, but I hope that helps for your audience as well as you.
Samir Samal, you are a great guest, and we've enjoyed having you here. How can our audience get more information about you and these various ventures?
Sure. One is there are 3 respective websites. There's Blue Ocean Global Tech, TECH.com. Then there is girlpowertalk.com and girlpowerusa.org. And those represent, these 3 organizations. You can also reach me. One of my email addresses is ssomal@blueoceanglobaltech.com. Just because you're a friend of mine, Dr. Schein, my mobile phone is 202-276-7589. And, I'm somebody that, just takes the time. It doesn't matter who's calling me, and I get solicitations all day. I always pick up the phone. I always talk to people. And I think that that's something where one relationship, one conversation, one new friendship can change the course of your life. And I try to be that for everyone that I'm so fortunate to meet.
Fascinating. Well, we appreciate your being here today. Business students, business persons, or consumers, business law impacts much of what you do. This segment is designed to help you get past the headlines on key stories. The U.S. Supreme Court pauses the EPA's so-called good neighbor rule. In a close 5-4 vote, SCOTUS put a temporary hold on a U.S. Environmental Protection Agency rule, that's the EPA, that is called the Good Neighbor Rule. It comes into play when a state is viewed as contributing to pollution in another state. Normally, each state is responsible for its own pollution controls. SCOTUS determined that the strict proposed EPA emissions reduction standards could cause irreversible harm to some of the states involved. Led by Ohio, the state said that the regulation was costly and could lead to blackouts, while the EPA said the rule was needed to fight air pollution. The plaintiff states also claimed that the EPA's plan is an illegal overreach, which undermines the principles of the Federal Clean Air Act, which allows states leeway to propose their own air pollution control measures. The EPA plan is reportedly in effect in 11 states. Courts have blocked it in another 12 states. So interesting balance there. The Supreme Court held that the emissions reduction standards established by a federal plan would probably cause irreversible harm to several of the affected states, unless the plan was stayed until it could be reviewed by the lower courts. This is now punted back to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia to take another look. This is the third major defeat for the EPA over the last few years. It lost an air pollution case regarding carbon dioxide in West Virginia, and then the Sackett case regarding wetlands. The United States Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that sleeping in public can be banned. The city of Grants Pass, Oregon, passed an ordinance banning people from sleeping or camping outdoors on public property. This is an eminently practical rule from my standpoint. If these areas are used for such purposes, the lawful purposes of public enjoyment and green spaces are denied to the citizens who are paying the taxes. These places are also not equipped with sanitation for food preparation and things like that. Sadly, in a number of cities, such encampments have turned into crime and drug dealing centers. Grants Pass has only 38,000 residents, but a reported 600 street people hang out there. This is a great burden. Allowing them to use public spaces exacerbates the problem. Violators under this new law are subject to a $295 civil fine for initial violations. However, this could increase to $1,250 and 30 days in jail for repeat offenders. The crime would be criminal trespass. A lawsuit was filed on behalf of the street people to stop enforcement of the ordinance. The U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal enjoined enforcement of the law. The Ninth Circuit held that it would violate the cruel and unusual punishments clause of the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution. And this would apply in the case, according to the Ninth Circuit, if there were no beds in homeless shelters. The city appealed to SCOTUS, which reversed. Writing for the majority, Justice Neil Gorsuch rejected the Ninth Circuit interpretation of SCOTUS precedents. The decision determined that enforcement of generally applicable laws regulating camping on public lands doesn't qualify as cruel and unusual punishment, and that public camping ordinances do not compare to prior SCOTUS cases cited by the Ninth Circuit. To arrest governors who get in the way of Tom Homan. One of Trump's first appointments was Tom Homan for head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. He returns to this position, which he held in the Trump's first administration. His record of success in closing the border and enforcing the Remain in Mexico policy is well known. Some moron Democrat governors have openly called for resistance to deportations. This includes Maura Healey of Massachusetts, Gavin Newsom of California, and J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. The resistance would most likely be a federal crime, and I call on the new DOJ to enforce the applicable laws. It is odd that they are voicing resistance, as this is the first approach of Homan is to remove 300,000 convicted criminals. How are these idiots helping the people of their states? Would it not be better to have fewer criminals in your states? Homan is also looking for 300,000 missing children as a result of the badly botched Biden-Harris border. The U.S. national debt hits $35 trillion. This is not a one-party problem. I've heard a pundit recently comment that the service on the national debt next year will exceed the amount that we put into national defense. Part of my concern is I don't hear either political party campaigning on a basis of controlling the national debt. I'm very concerned about it, not just for our children and our children's children, but for the current generation. And remember, this is on top of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security running out of money. We have some serious financial situations going on, and America's politicians are not dealing with it. Over 800 IRS employees owe millions in back taxes. In a special report from the Washington Examiner, apparently Senator Ernst requested an audit. Not sure of the trigger for this investigation. The stats are that the IRS says of 2,044 employees were reported to have balances totaling more than $12 million. 860 employees still have not paid their overdue taxes. So only 20 of the 70 employees who willfully evaded paying their taxes were removed. So that means 50 employees who willfully evaded taxes are still on the American payroll. Over 5,800 IRS and contractor employees owed nearly $50 million in overdue taxes. He's proposed a reform law to require an annual cleanup. That is long overdue. Generally, I am against the last 30 years of mergers and acquisitions that has dramatically reduced competition and innovation. There is a reason that we have antitrust laws. I need to say that because apparently both political parties and most federal judges have forgotten that. In any event, sometimes it does make sense. The geniuses working for the U.S. taxpayers turned down the proposed merger between successful JetBlue and struggling Spirit. So in turn, Spirit has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is called a reorganization plan. They have assured ticket holders that all tickets will be honored and they will keep flying. My immediate concern is that the feds increase safety inspections on the Spirit fleet to make sure there are no compromises there. Spirit's announced plan is supposed to have the restructuring process completed by March. The Federal Trade Commission just announced a new rule to protect consumers. This is called click to cancel rule. Sellers will need to make canceling their enrollment process at least as easy to use as the sign-up process. FTC Chair Lena M. Khan stated, nobody should be stuck paying for a service they no longer want. So the idea is that if the consumer signed up through an app, they can use a similar app to cancel. They do not have to go through a website or even mail something in to cancel. I know cases where consumers cancel credit cards just to shut off auto enrollment situations due to the difficulty of canceling a subscription. This cancellation rule should take effect in 6 months. Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Saving America welcomes Dr. Danielle Lord. She is a native of the Pacific Northwest and has spent her career helping to develop others, creating unique curricula for organizations large and small, and served as a university professor. She holds a PhD in leadership theory. Her bio says that her superpower is helping people to connect the dots, making and discovering connections that might not have been realized before. Dr. Lord's firm is called Archetype Learning Solutions. She's recently started a webcast on USA Global Network. We welcome Dr. Danielle Lord for her first appearance on Saving America.
Well, thank you, Dr. Schein. I hope it's the first of many. This is such an important topic. I think it's very well connected with the conversations that I'm having about really making sure we can bring compassion back into the world because it's so lacking right now.
Sounds like a winner to me. As you know, we asked our guests 3 questions that we've researched in advance. So number one, tell us, our audience, about how leadership differs from management.
I am always happy to talk about this particular topic because it is still very misunderstood. And there are still plenty of people out there who are saying they're the same thing. They are not the same thing. They are very different. It is my hypothesis that our management practices are really rooted in a historical element of the industrial era, in which we collectively came together and started working as humans in factories. At that point in time, that industrial era, kind of the Victorian era, it was actually illegal, at least in the Western European context of Britain, to live in poverty. It was illegal to be poor. And you had people clamoring for jobs that paid pennies per day. It was very easy to be let go or terminated from that job because someone was always waiting to pick it up. So our whole context of work is rooted in that paradigm, which was all hail the machine. The machinery, the equipment, the automation was very brand new to industry, and everything that we knew was about making sure that those machines ran efficiently, and we needed management to do that. So management, by definition, is about a transactional process that includes budgeting, prioritizing, scheduling, tasking, making sure things are staying in line with the work that needs to be done to accomplish the goals. That does not require any human relationship. And that's where leadership becomes so important, and how leadership is different from management. It's making sure that those things are happening through an influence-based positive relationship in which the leadership and the team members are working together towards those goals. That's my definition.
Fascinating. What can our audience learn from your latest book? Tell us a little bit about that.
So thank you. I just published my latest book. It's called Engaging Your Employees. We are facing an engagement deficit in this country, and I would probably say worldwide. Engagement scores are, of course, what we call employee engagement is what is defined by Gallup as the discretionary effort that our employees or our team members, as I like to call them, put forth in the organization. For 30 years, we've been telling people that your voice matters. And for 30 years, I haven't sat across the table with executives for 30 years, but basically the time that I have spent, about half of that, around the same tables with executives, listening to their conversations, has told me that the voice doesn't matter, the voice of the employee. And from my hypothesis is that if we want to lead through a relationship, influence-based relationship, we have to have a personal relationship of presence, vulnerability, and authenticity with the people that we are leading. So my book outlines 12 heart-centered strategies that are 11 of them are completely free. It just requires you to have some vulnerability and some presence and engage with people in an entirely different level. The very same things that our employees or our team members are asking for. So that's my latest book. You can get the book. It's available on Amazon, and in the back there are 12 or 13 QR codes, and you can scan those QR codes and download a variety of tools to help you implement those heartfelt strategies.
Fascinating. And our third question is, what's the best advice you can give to a business student or early career executive about achieving success? Because we talk about, if you want to be successful, you need to be more than a manager. You have to be a leader. So where does that come in, and how would you talk to your younger self or to someone that you know?
And to all of my graduate students, I talked to them about the notion of the relationship, the leader team member relationship, and that is where you get the biggest bang from your buck. It doesn't come from ego. And that's the biggest problem that we have, I think, in our organizations today, is that we see the ego continue to perpetuate. We see the ego continuing to be rewarded. In our organizations, we are still rewarding for performance, not behavior. And there was a fascinating study, and it grew legs and walked off. I can't find my original copy, but it was from 1989 from Dr. Fred Luthans, who said that most as successful, as he defined them, so for those listening, I just used air quotes around successful, but our successful leaders are promoted based on the notion that they have made somebody else look good. And that was either through securing a large contract, bringing in a large amount of money, whatever that looked like was not necessarily always in the best interest of the team members or the people who make up the organization. So I always tell leaders, aspiring leaders in business, make sure that there's no trail of dead bodies behind you as you ascend into leadership roles. It is not about stepping on people. It is about lifting them up to make the organization a much better place. I've had my own very fascinating self-discovery, if you will, over the 2.5 years that I have been in business for myself. And I taught the innovation course as the lead faculty at the graduate school where I was at. And the MBA students were required to take a course on innovation. And part of that course was this idea of getting our business leaders to understand that innovation, creativity only comes when the mind is completely free of stress, the mind and the body, because it's an interconnected thing, right? The mind and the body have to be completely free of stress in order to be creative and innovative. And we're not free of stress when we have leaders that are micromanaging us, when we have leaders that are promoting toxic behavior, when we have leaders that are chastising everything that we do. And I thought I was in a position that I really was free from stress. I had executive level positions that I held and really believed that I was free from all of that. And it wasn't until 2 years into being in my own business as an business owner, that I really discovered that, wow, I am far more innovative and creative now being out there on my own than I ever was, even at the executive level, functioning at that level. So Business leaders, again, in air quotes, leaders, you got to have the influence, you got to have the relationship. So when I say leaders, that's who I'm referring to, but leave the ego behind. It is really about lifting up the employees of your organization so that the organization can be successful, not necessarily you. You will be successful if you're doing the right thing. So.
Now, we are seeing finally an improvement in opportunities for women. Do you give different advice to women than men, since women have been used to now, gee, it's terrific, I'm moving into management, but the transition from management to leadership may be a little bit more difficult for women?
I do absolutely believe that that is a truth. And I think what happened was, in the 1980s, I think we had enough scientific research or data to really demonstrate what good leadership looked like. And that's when we did start to see women enter into those leadership positions in 1980s, 1990s. I think what happened with women is that we adopted a toxic feminism approach to leadership positions or leadership roles, thinking that I have to act just like the men acted. In fact, I have to go one step further and be more masculine and more manly than the men were. And I think what that embodied was this idea of toxic feminism. I think we had a fantastic and missed opportunity to come in as our true authentic selves, as women who are the carriers of culture, who are known to be kind and genuine and large-hearted, and really show what great leadership looked like. I think that was a big miss.
Fascinating. And as you know, we try and keep this short so people will actually listen to these interviews. But how can our audience get more information about you and your book and the things you're working on?
Thank you. So you can call or text me at my business line, which is 253-269-2116. I take calls or text messages. You can also email me at Danielle@archetypelearningsolutions.com. And the things you think about when you're naming your business, you don't think about how long the email address is going to be. But Danielle@archetypelearningsolutions.com. That is also my website. You can find my website at that same address, archetypelearningsolutions.com.
The headline is State Department Responds to CCP's Escalating Attacks on Falun Gong in the U.S. Of course, the reality is that the CCP has little respect for anyone outside their closed circle. This is especially true of the inept Biden-Harris administration. In a prior Saving America, I introduced Falun Gong to my audience. This is a group that focuses on self-reflection and meditation. In Red China, there are 70 to 100 million followers. Of course, the insecure CCP losers like Z hate any competition for the minds of the peasants. What is especially disturbing is that this persecution of the followers has spread to the U.S. Those Chinese fortunate enough to get out of China are being harassed here, according to reports. The U.S. State Department reports that the CCP will surveil, threaten, and harass PRC nationals, including Falun Gong practitioners. An interesting sidelight in this is that leaked information pertaining to the CCP strategy for sabotaging Shenyun Performing Arts. This is a New York-based classical Chinese dance company that was founded by Falun Gong practitioners. Many of us have seen their advertising, including their nice TV commercials. Apparently, the whack CCP consider even this performing group to be a threat to their false narrative of a communist utopia in China. The Shenyun ads even say that they present China before communism. An interesting fresh headline from NTD says 2 men have pled guilty to a bribery scheme to take away the tax-exempt status of the Shenyun Performing Arts. Kind of interesting, folks. I call on local law enforcement to coordinate with the State Department to investigate and prosecute any foreign actors who interfere with this peaceful sect. Authorities in Maryland announced they had charged a monster here illegally with the savage rape and murder of mother of 5, Rachel Morin, while she was on a run in Maryland. He had fled from El Salvador, where he was wanted for murdering a woman. He was linked through DNA to the rape of a 9-year-old girl in California some months earlier. This is a monster. This is someone who never should have been in this country. In New York, 2 13-year-old girls were kidnapped and one raped by an illegal in broad daylight. He used a machete to threaten the girls, then tied them up with shoelaces and molested them. Remember, if they weren't here, they could not have committed these horrendous crimes in America. Thank Joe Biden for opening our borders to these monsters. Speaking of irrational discrimination, there have been disclosures recently about something called NewsGuard. NewsGuard is supposed to be the arbiter of fake news. They evaluate various publication sources for their veracity. The problem, of course, is the scumballs doing the determinations are whack lefties. The problem here is that major corporations have been relying on these credibility ratings. That means that the publication source is conservative. They are more likely to get bad ratings by NewsGuard and therefore will not get the advertising revenue that they need to survive. I encourage all to be skeptical of not just alleged news sources, but also of any operation claiming to verify those news sources. In a story that has evolved, the Biden-Harris administration made a deal with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, and 2 of his deputies. They would get life in prison at Gitmo without having to face the death penalty. As public outrage ramped up overnight, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, also known to my audiences as Mr. AWOL, suddenly showed up to retract the deal. Time for these 3 to be hung and revived 1,000 times each to make up for the 3,000 deaths that they caused for 9/11. And remember, many hundreds and hundreds others died later from exposure due to asbestos and other contaminants at the 9/11 site. I'm telling you, Harris cannot be trusted to watch out for the security of America. Folks, we have a possible mortgage crisis looming for hundreds of thousands of Americans. This could be a very tough time for home buyers who bought homes with adjustable rate mortgages, also known as ARMs. Since 2019, more than 1.7 million people bought a home with an ARM, adjustable rate mortgage. Often an ARM will reset after 3 to 5 years. Many of them are set for 5 years, and that 5-year point is right now. This puts these unlucky homeowners in rates that are more than double what they had previously had. Often, these loans were in the $1 million range and were used in higher priced housing markets. Some of those markets have even declined, which would make the situation worse since they would need cash up front, plus having a monthly mortgage payment that could be double. It's a very serious situation, folks. I do not have a resolution other than if we can get the inflation rate down on a long-term basis, then we may be able to lower those mortgage rates. I don't see anything happening in that regard for perhaps at least a year from right now, June of 2024. Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.